Not every NBA player's story ends with championships and success. For some, life after basketball is filled with struggles from bad financial decisions to criminal charges, starting with Scottie Pippen, whose post-basketball life has certainly made some noise for all the wrong reasons. Scottie's story is certainly one of the most fascinating and tragic in basketball history. As a six-time NBA champion and one of the greatest two-way players the game has ever seen, his legacy seemed untouchable. But in recent years, his life has unraveled in a way that's been both shocking and heartbreaking to witness. Once a quiet, understated legend whose game spoke volumes, Pippen has become a figure of public ridicule, embroiled in personal drama and controversies that have started to overshadow his Hall of Fame career. Pippen's rise to basketball stardom is nothing short of remarkable. Born in rural Arkansas, the youngest of 12 children, he faced incredible adversity from an early age. His family struggled with poverty, and his father's stroke during Scottie's freshman year of high school made their situation even more dire. Barely cracking the high school varsity roster, and standing just 6'1" as a senior, Pippen's basketball prospects were non-existent. A chance connection between his high school coach and Central Arkansas University gave him a lifeline, and an improbable growth spurt to 6'8" transformed him into a legitimate NBA prospect. By his senior year, he was dominating NAIA competition, eventually becoming the 5th overall pick in the 1987 NBA draft, thanks to the vision of Jerry Krause. What followed was a legendary career with the Chicago Bulls. Pippen's pairing with Michael Jordan created the most iconic duo in NBA history. Pippen's versatility as a point forward and his dominance as a defender were essential to the Bulls' 6 championship runs. While Jordan was undoubtedly the alpha, Pippen was the glue guy that held the dynasty together. At his peak, Pippen was arguably the second best player in the NBA, a 7-time All-Star and 10-time All-Defensive Team member who elevated everyone around him. However, the cracks in his reputation began to show during the 1994 playoffs when Jordan retired. Leading the Bulls to an impressive 55 wins, Pippen finished 3rd in MVP voting, but tarnished his leadership image by refusing to enter a playoff game after Phil Jackson drew up the final shot for Tony Kukoc. While Tony's game-winning shot briefly masked the incident, it became a defining blemish on Pippen's career. Post-retirement, Pippen's struggles became more visible. Financial mismanagement, including the loss of millions on a private jet, and a publicized divorce from his wife, Larsa Pippen, painted a picture of a man whose life was unraveling. The media feasted on Larsa's infidelity and eventual relationship with rapper Future, further humiliating Scottie. His attempts to find a post-basketball identity faltered, with failed coaching aspirations and a souring of his relationship with the Bulls organization. The release of The Last Dance documentary in 2020 seemed to only amplify Pippen's bitterness. While the series celebrated the Bulls' dynasty, Pippen felt slighted by his portrayal, particularly in comparison to Jordan's glorification. He later unleashed a barrage of criticisms against Jordan, accusing him of selfishness, diminishing his contributions to the team, and even calling him a poor teammate. These comments shocked fans, who had long seen Pippen as Jordan's trusted sidekick and his best friend. Instead, the documentary exposed deep-seated resentment, with Pippen using his autobiography as a platform to air grievances and rewrite history. Adding to the turmoil was the tragic loss of Pippen's eldest son Antron at just 33 years old. The pain of losing a child compounded with what seemed like a chain of events derailing this guy's life. Unfortunately for Scottie, when it rains, it pours. The cherry on top of his public collapse came when Jordan's son Marcus began a relationship with Larsa Pippen, further embarrassing Scottie to the public eye. Today, Scottie Pippen's name is often associated with more controversy than his on-court brilliance. From financial struggles and personal loss, to his very public falling out with Jordan, his post-retirement years have been a far cry from the heights he once reached. I mean, the Scottie Pippen downfall is one of the most disheartening. As a guy whose role in basketball history could not be overstated, watching him deal with tragedy and ruined relationships has been hard to watch on a human level. And all the world can really do is just wish the best for him at this point. If you're watching right now, there is a 95% chance that you aren't subscribed to the channel, so make sure to change that. It's free and it really helps us get more of these videos out to you at a higher quality and at a longer duration, so make sure you click that button for me. Ricky Barry's life is a bittersweet tale of immense promise cut tragically short. Born on October 6, 1964 in Lansing, Michigan, Ricky was immersed in basketball from the start. His father, Bill Berry, was an assistant coach at Michigan State during Magic's years, and Ricky grew up surrounded by the game's intricacies. Basketball wasn't just a sport for Ricky, it was part of his identity. From a young age, he displayed a natural feel for the game, and his upbringing on the sidelines of Michigan State's program only fueled his passion. As a teenager, Ricky's potential became undeniable. Standing 6'8" and possessing a remarkably smooth shooting stroke, he had the kind of versatility and skill set that could transform a game. He honed his abilities at Live Oak High School in Morgan Hill, California, after his family relocated to the area when Bill Berry took over as the head coach at San Jose State. It was clear to everyone who saw him play that Ricky was destined for greatness. Ricky's journey to the NBA was shaped by his father's guidance, though Bill was cautious about mixing his roles as a coach and a parent. After high school, Ricky initially committed to Oregon State, but after one season, he realized he wanted to play under his father. With his mother's persuasion, Bill agreed, and Ricky transferred to San Jose State in 1984. Under his father's tutelage, Ricky just blossomed, becoming the team's centerpiece and a prolific scorer. Injuries plagued some of his collegiate career, but his talent remained undeniable. By the time the Sacramento Kings selected him as the 18th overall pick in the 1988 NBA draft, Ricky had established himself as one of the most promising forwards in the game. Berry's rookie season with the Kings really showcased his potential. Playing in an era before three-point shooting was widely emphasized, he was already ahead of his time as a sharpshooter. He averaged 11 a game on an efficient 45% from the field, including an impressive 40% from three-point range, a rare feat for a rookie or any player playing at this time. His breakout performance came in February 1989 when he scored a career-high 34 points against the Golden State Warriors. Over the final stretch of the season, Ricky's numbers surged to 18.3 points and 5 rebounds per game, demonstrating his ability to excel at the highest level. Teammates, coaches, and fans saw him as a cornerstone for the Kings' future, a player who could help lead the franchise to new heights. Off the court, Ricky was known for his calm demeanor, intelligence, and thoughtful approach to life. He was well liked by teammates and those in the Kings organization. His humility stood out in a league often dominated by larger-than-life personalities. Despite the promise of a lucrative NBA career, Ricky kept his sights on life beyond basketball. He even worked a summer job at a car dealership wanting to prepare for a future beyond the game. However, Ricky's inner world was far more complex than anyone could have realized. On August 14th, 1989, the basketball world was stunned when news broke of his death. Less than an hour after an argument with his wife Valerie, Ricky took his own life in their suburban Sacramento home, stating that Valerie didn't love him and that she was trying to take advantage of him. The revelation shocked those who knew him, as Ricky had never outwardly shown signs of such despair. Friends and teammates struggled to make sense of the tragedy. Jeff Logan, one of Ricky's closest friends, was adamant that marital issues alone couldn't have driven him to such an act. Others speculated that a combination of factors, marital stress, the pressures of professional basketball, and the responsibilities of home ownership had created an overwhelming burden for the 24-year-old. Psychologists weighed in, suggesting that Ricky's stoic personality may have hidden deeper emotional struggles that went unaddressed. The aftermath of Ricky's death only deepened the sense of mystery and sorrow. His family canceled a planned memorial service in Sacramento without explanation, and Valerie retreated from public view, declining to comment on her husband's death. The Sacramento Kings organization, still reeling from the loss, honored Ricky's memory in the following season, but the void he left was palpable. Ricky Berry's tragic death is a reminder of how unseen struggles can often affect even the most seemingly composed individuals. From the outside, he had everything: youth, talents, a loving family, and a promising career. Yet, beneath the surface, he battled demons that ultimately claimed his life. Decades later, his story remains a cautionary tale about the importance of mental health and the pressures that young athletes face. Had Ricky Berry lived, the NBA might have witnessed the full blossoming of his talents. His combination of size, shooting, and versatility was ahead of his time, and his presence on the court hinted at a player who could redefine the forward position. Hell, some even related his talent to that of Reggie Miller. It's unfortunate we never got to watch his talents grow, but more importantly, Ricky was a human being whose loss reminds us that success and promise are no guarantees of inner peace. Sebastian Telfair's story is one of the most fascinating tales in basketball history. A rollercoaster ride of immense talent, stratospheric hype, and a fall that splattered harder than you could have possibly imagined. To fully understand how Telfair went from the next big thing to a career marked by unfulfilled potential, we need to start at the beginning. His roots in the tough streets of Brooklyn, New York. Telfair grew up in the Coney Island projects, an area known for its challenges, but also its passion for basketball. Courts were scattered throughout the neighborhood, offering kids an escape from the harsh realities of poverty and violence. For Telfair, basketball wasn't just a pastime. It was a means of survival and a path to a better life. His inspiration was his older cousin, Stephon Marbury, who had grown up in the same environment and achieved NBA stardom. Marbury's success was living proof that the game could change lives, and Telfair wanted to follow in his footsteps. Living just a floor apart in the same apartment building, Telfair grew up watching Marbury's rise. From a young age, he idolized his cousin, soaking in every lesson he could from Marbury's journey. By the time Telfair was 6 years old, he was already displaying a drive and determination that set him apart from his peers. He dominated games in his local 11 underleague, and his work ethic was relentless. With a singular focus on making it to the NBA, Telfair would spend countless hours perfecting his craft. By middle school, it was clear that Telfair was no ordinary talent. His skill set, lightning-fast speed, impeccable ball handling, and extraordinary vision was years ahead of his age group. He had an innate ability to make basketball look effortless, and the buzz surrounding him began to quickly grow. This buzz had a fever pitch when he was invited to the Adidas ABCD camp, a showcase for the best high school players in the country. Most participants were upperclassmen, but Telfair attended as an 8th grader and held his own against some of the top players in the nation. That performance solidified his status as a phenom, and made it clear to everyone watching that Telfair was destined for greatness. As Telfair entered Lincoln High School, his legend only grew. In a city that prided itself on basketball, Telfair became a household name. His games were must-see events, with gymnasiums packed to capacity and fans spilling out into the parking lot. This was before the age of social media, yet Telfair achieved a level of fame that seemed almost mythical. Celebrities like Jay-Z and Derek Jeter were regulars at his game, and scouts from every major college program in the country lined the bleachers to watch him play. His flashy style of basketball, mixed with his ability to score and set up teammates, made him one of the most exciting high schoolers the game has ever seen. One of the most defining moments of Telfair's high school lore came during a legendary one-on-one game against his cousin Stephon Marbury. By this time, Marbury was an established NBA All-Star, while Telfair was a 17-year-old high school junior. The game took place on a street court in their neighborhood, and the entire block turned out to watch. Despite the age and experience gap, Telfair rose to the occasion, holding his own and even outplaying Marbury. The performance only added to the mystique surrounding Telfair, cementing his status as a generational talent. Telfair's junior year was a triumph. He led Lincoln High School to the state championship, averaging over 30 a game and nearly 10 assists. His mix of speed, ball handling, and court vision made him unstoppable at the high school level. Off the court, his celebrity status continued to grow. He was invited to high-profile events like Jay-Z's sponsored pro game at Rucker, where he competed against NBA players and still managed to stand out. By his senior year, Telfair was the biggest name in high school basketball, drawing comparisons to legends like Allen Iverson and even LeBron James. Initially, Telfair planned to attend the University of Louisville, believing that college would be the best place to develop his game and address some of his weaknesses. Despite his incredible talent, there were concerns about how his skills would translate into the NBA. At just 6 feet tall, Telfair was undersized, which made finishing at the rim and defending bigger guards a challenge. His jump shot was also inconsistent, a glaring weakness that needed to be addressed. College seemed like the next logical step, but a tragic event would change everything for him. Just weeks after committing to Louisville, a murder occurred near Telfair's family's apartment. The incident shook him to his core, reminding him of the dangers of his environment. Determined to get his family out of the projects, Telfair made the decision to declare for the NBA draft straight out of high school. It was a risky move, but one that ultimately paid off when he was selected 13th overall in the 2004 NBA draft by the Portland Trail Blazers. He also signed an 8-figure endorsement deal with Adidas, securing his financial future and fulfilling his goal of providing for his family. Telfair entered the NBA with sky-high expectations, but his professional career never lived up to the hype. While he showed some flashes of brilliance, his weaknesses, poor shooting, limited size, and inconsistent defense were exposed at the highest level. After achieving his dream, Telfair admitted that he lost some of the hunger that had driven him for so long. His NBA career was marked by frequent trades and stints with multiple teams, never quite finding a consistent role or home in the NBA. Telfair would also struggle with leaving his past in the past, as he would be charged with illegal firearm possession 3 times, the third of which would land him in prison, as well as being charged in the health and welfare plan that just landed Big Baby behind bars. The downfall of Telfair was certainly an unfortunate tale, and a real reality check for the man who seemed to once have it all. But at least he left us one crazy story in the meantime. Vin Baker's story is a roller coaster, making it one of the most compelling in NBA history. His rise to prominence was fast and impressive, but the sudden and steep decline in his career was nothing short of tragic. Vin Baker's journey to the NBA wasn't one marked by childhood stardom or high school accolades, unlike many of his peers. Born in Old Saybrook, Connecticut, he wasn't even on his high school's varsity team until his junior year. His rise to basketball prominence didn't come until much later in life, and as a result, Baker was relatively unknown on the national stage early on. Unlike players who grew up under the spotlight, Baker was a late bloomer who had to work his way up from a smaller stage. While many of his contemporaries were being scouted by major D1 programs, Baker did not receive offers from the basketball powerhouses of the country. Instead, he ended up at the University of Hartford, a much smaller and less prestigious school. But what Hartford lacked in national recognition, Baker made up for with his remarkable performance. By his junior season, he was a dominant force on the court, averaging more than 27 and 10 and nearly 4 blocks a game. His performance was so impressive that in 1992, Sports Illustrated dubbed him as America's best-kept secret. He played with such intensity and skill that those who saw him knew he was something special, but unfortunately, many didn't get that chance, as Hartford's games were rarely broadcasted nationally. Despite this, coaches and scouts who did see him play were in awe of his talents and his college performances beginning to attract more attention. However, despite his individual brilliance, Hartford teams did not have much success. They never made it to the NCAA tourney during his time there, which kept his profile from rising even higher. Yet, Baker's college career wasn't without accomplishments. He finished his time at Hartford as the school's all-time leading scorer, and his talent was enough to propel him into the NBA. In the 1993 draft, Baker was selected 8th overall by the Milwaukee Bucks, in a class loaded with future superstars like Chris Webber and Penny Hardaway. Baker's transition to NBA basketball was a success almost immediately. By his second season in the league, he had already established himself as one of the premier big men of his generation. Standing at 6'11" and weighing 230 pounds, Baker was a physical force, but it was his versatility that really set him apart. At a time when the game was still dominated by traditional low-post bruisers, Baker adapted his game to be more dynamic. He was one of the only big men to consistently stretch the floor, shooting 45% from the mid-range, a statistic that was mostly unheard of from players at his position. He didn't just shoot well for a big man. His scoring ability from anywhere on the court made him a matchup nightmare. He was also known for his excellent footwork in the post, his strong rebounding, and his ability to see the floor with a good court vision. This made him a unique player in an era where most big men were expected to be inside, beating each other up. In the late 1990s, when the NBA's pace slowed down significantly, averaging 20 and 10 per game was a rare feat. Baker was able to do this consistently even though his competition was fierce. He stood out as one of the most skilled and versatile big men at the time. Despite his impressive individual performance, Baker's teams were often stuck in the middle. Whether it was the Bucks or the Seattle Supersonics, Baker never found himself on a team that could truly contend for a championship. He reached the playoffs several times, but never made it past the second round. And as a result, his NBA journey lacked the postseason success that many expected of him. Baker's career reached a critical juncture in 1999 when he signed a massive 7-year, $86 million contract with the Seattle Supersonics. The deal was a sign of his potential and his status as one of the NBA's brightest stars. But it was at this point that the cracks in his career started to show. While Baker had been a standout player, he was beginning to struggle with personal issues that no one could have anticipated. Behind the scenes, his addiction to alcohol and drugs began to worsen, and it was something that at the time was not widely known. Baker had become dependent on substances to perform, relying on alcohol and drugs to get through games and practices. According to teammates, there were times when the entire locker room would smell of booze before a practice. See, Baker wasn't exactly like many other stars in the NBA. He didn't grow up a star, as we covered previously, and nobody really thought twice about Baker until he made it into the NBA. He was a devout Christian kid who would return home most weekends throughout college, and as he was casted into the world, not only was he on his own for the first time, but the world was watching his every move. Sure, he was having all the success in the world at the start of his career, but he was suffering every minute of it. Baker states he had some severe anxiety throughout his early years in the NBA. What he found was his fix was drugs and alcohol. This certainly fixed the issue for the time being, but in reality, Baker was a ticking time bomb. Despite these troubling signs, the Sonics stuck with him, betting on his potential and re-signing him to the lucrative contract. Unfortunately, his personal struggles continued to spiral, and by the early 2000s, it became clear that Baker's best years were already behind him. In 2003, after being traded to the Celtics, the full extent of his issues would come to light. Team doctors discovered significant liver damage caused by his substance abuse. By 2006, just 7 years after signing his enormous contract, Baker was out of the NBA. It was a heartbreaking fall from grace for a player who had once seemed to have it all. Baker's personal life continued to decline. He turned to an even wider array of drugs, including Xanax and Librium, and spent his days in isolation. His health deteriorated rapidly. He became skeletal, vomiting blood and struggling with severe liver damage. To make matters worse, Baker had squandered much of his earnings. Despite earning over $100 million throughout his career, he lost it all. His $3 million home in Connecticut was foreclosed, his restaurant went out of business, and in an almost surreal twist, he was forced to sell his Olympic gold medal. By 2011, Baker had officially hit rock bottom. He had blown through his fortune and was now living under the same roof as his parents in his childhood home. Essentially broke, Baker was drinking bottles a day, waiting for the alcohol to take his life. It was a dark reality that gradually got worse and worse before destroying his life and leaving him with nothing. After the humbling reality of being a retired all-star that was overweight on his parents' couch, Baker managed to tackle what very addicts ever do in their life, and that is curb their addiction. Through reconnecting with his Catholic upbringing, and after multiple attempts at sobriety, Baker was able to successfully quit indulging for the long haul, but still, this left him far from the real world. See, Baker had no money and no real-world experience. He could put a ball in the rim, but that was over and done with. In his words, the only life he lived was the fantasy of the NBA. Baker would use one of his NBA connections to launch himself back into reality, contacting the former Sonics owner and Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz on potentially getting into the coffee business. Schultz was certainly open to the idea, but rather than being a franchise owner, Schultz had other plans. 10 years withdrawn from the NBA lights, Baker would start at the bottom of the food chain as a Starbucks barista. Keeping in touch with his religion and working a normal job along with the rest of society not only helped Baker build a routine to keep him out of trouble, but also taught him a lot about the real world. After years of what he calls the hardest work he's ever done, Baker worked his way up to a manager position at his local store, before eventually opportunity called. After years of getting back onto his feet, Baker would get an opportunity to get back into basketball with the Milwaukee Bucks, working in broadcasting and eventually assistant coaching, and even winning that championship that he never got during his playing days. Vin Baker certainly lost a lot throughout his life due to his addiction, and in more than one ways, Baker is one of those guys that reminds you that these guys are really just humans. Vin was a normal kid that began partaking in some destructive habits, and by the time he realized what it was doing to him, it was already too late. I mean, he was never a bad guy, just a guy with a problem. In the end, I'm sure Baker wishes he could have rebounded without wasting $100 million in the process. No matter how hard you splat at the bottom, Baker's story proves that continual progress can get you out of whatever hole you're in. Lorenzen Wright's story is one that should have ended with a fairy tale happily ever after finish. While Lorenzen was looked at as a hero, he worked hard to achieve success at the highest level of professional basketball and seemed to want nothing more than to give back to his community. It all sounds good and fun, right? Well, what if I told you that Lorenzen Wright's story is one of the most bone-chilling and infuriating in basketball history? Lorenzen's journey began with great promise. As a kid growing up in Memphis, from day one, this guy was the hometown hero, taking his talents to the University of Memphis, where he became a standout star. Lorenzen was a solid big guy all around. He was never Mr. Dominant or anything, but as a walking double-double, he was one of the most consistent and solid players at the collegiate level, which was enough to earn him the 7th overall pick in the 1996 NBA draft by the Los Angeles Clippers. As a rookie, Lorenzen showed glimpses of his potential, scoring a postseason career-high 17 points in a Game 2 loss against the Utah Jazz on April 26th. Though the Clippers lost the series, Wright's talent was up and coming. The following season, on December 26th, he recorded a season-high 33 points and 15 rebounds in an overtime loss to the Los Angeles Lakers. In 1999, Wright joined the Atlanta Hawks, where he played some of his best basketball. During the 01 season, he averaged a career-high 12.4 points. Before on June 27, 2001, Wright was traded to the Memphis Grizzlies, where he would continue to play some of his best ball. Wright was never really a star, and at his best was a low double-digit scoring big guy that played his role like the next dude. But as a hometown kid balling out, it's still hard to find people saying a bad word about this kid. Off the court, Wright was known for his generosity. He established the Sierra Simone Wright Scholarship Fund in honor of his infant daughter, who passed away in 2003. I mean, Lorenzen seems to be your typical role model in the community. He recognized his extremely abnormal blessing, seemed to use the opportunity to give back to those who lacked basic necessities, as well as treating everyday people like his equal. It was all that you could really ask of a guy. Wright had a successful run in the NBA. He played for 13 seasons, earning $55 million in the process. All was well. Wright set his focus after his playing days to graduating college and caring for his 6 children with his wife Shara Wright. What happens next is, unfortunately, where the life and legacy of Lorenzen Wright takes one wicked turn. It is largely speculated that after his playing days, Wright ran into some financial issues. It is also believed that these issues were due to Shara having access to Lorenzen's fountain of wealth, in which she felt free to spend it wildly. As the fountain began to run dry, issues arose. Lorenzen was forced to take to illegal methods to further provide for his family before in 2010 the two would file for divorce. Lorenzen would relocate to the Atlanta area, wherein after visiting the mother of his kid's house in Memphis 5 months after the divorce, it was the last time that he would be seen alive. On July 22nd, his family filed a missing persons report. 6 days later, his body was found in a wooded area near Memphis with gunshot wounds, and his body so decayed from the Memphis heat that his 200-pound frame weighed just 50 pounds. A chilling 911 call made from Wright's phone in the early hours of July 19th captured gunshots before the line went silent. However, the call was not immediately acted upon, delaying the investigation. Why the hell the 911 operator didn't believe that 11 gunshots fired were not worthy of reporting, especially when the person on the line would go missing just a few days later, is just another one of the abnormalities within the case. Lorenzen was declared dead of homicide, but for 7 years following the murder, the killer or killers walked free. Thousands of people attended Wright's funeral at the FedEx Forum. Speakers included then Memphis Mayor A.C. Wharton. He was a young man who never forgot who he was, where he came from, the values that shaped him, and the people who encouraged him along the way, said Wharton. Lorenzen's story was one of those special Memphis stories where a man is able to transcend his roots even while he represents those roots proudly. By December 2010, hope of a quick resolution to the case had faded. Authorities said that only 22 tips had came in, and Crime Stoppers executive director Buddy Chapman said that none of them were substantive. Lorenzen Wright was a wild mystery, and a devastating tragedy to the many lives he touched in his 34 years on this planet. Until in 2017, the case quickly flipped. The murder weapon would be found, and very shortly after, Billy R. Turner, a local landscaper and church deacon, was charged with first-degree murder. In December 2017, Wright's ex-wife Shara Wright Robinson was also arrested in connection with his death. Authorities alleged financial motives, citing a $1 million life insurance policy intended for the couple's 6 children. However, following Wright's death, his family would be disturbed to learn that the money went towards expensive cars, vacations, and clothing for Shara, rather than caring for the children that are unfortunately growing up without their father. In 2019, 9 years after the death of Lorenzen Wright, Shara would plead guilty to orchestrating the murder, in which she would be charged with 30 years behind bars. Lorenzen's story is one of the wildest in NBA history. It really goes to show how your actions can not only affect your own life, but the world around you. Now, nearly 15 years after his tragic passing, Lorenzen's scholarship program is still helping hundreds of kids, while his legacy as a role model in his community lived long beyond him. On the flip side, the disgusting selfishness of others have not only ruined their own lives, but left an innocent man dead and 6 innocent children without a parent in their life. Shara will be eligible for parole in 2027, and if granted, will allow Shara to walk the streets once again after just 9 years behind bars for orchestrating the murder of her children's father. Kermit Washington's basketball journey is a story of raw talent, resilience, and ultimately, tragedy, both on and off the court. Born on September 17, 1951 in Washington, D.C., he grew up in a challenging environment but found solace and purpose in basketball. Playing at American University, Kermit became one of the most dominant players in NCAA history, averaging 20 and 20 per game over his collegiate career. This rare feat, only achieved by a select few, established him as a top prospect for the NBA. In 1973, the Los Angeles Lakers selected Washington with the 5th overall pick in the NBA draft. Known for his toughness, defense, and rebounding ability, Washington quickly carved out a role as a reliable forward. Over his 10-year career, he played for several teams including the Celtics, Clippers, Trailblazers, and Warriors. His hard work and dedication culminated in an All-Star selection in 1980 while with the Trailblazers, a testament to his value on the court. Despite his basketball accomplishments, Washington's career will forever be overshadowed by a single moment that defined him in the eyes of the public. On December 9, 1977, during a heated game between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Houston Rockets, a scuffle broke out at center court. As Rudy Tomjanovich, a forward for the Rockets, sprinted towards the fight to intervene, Washington turned and delivered a devastating punch that connected with Tomjanovich's face. The blow left Tomjanovich with catastrophic injuries, including a fractured skull, spinal damage, and life-threatening internal bleeding. I mean, this wasn't just a knockout blow. This almost killed the man. A single sucker punch left the man tasting spinal fluid leaking into his mouth and the bone structure of his face detached from his skull. The aftermath of the punch was seismic, both for Tomjanovich and for Washington. Rudy required extensive surgery and rehabilitation, sidelining him for 5 months, though he eventually returned to the game. For Washington, the incident irreparably damaged his reputation. The NBA suspended him for 60 days without pay and fined him $10,000, a steep penalty at the time. Public backlash was swift and intense, with many calling for harsher punishment, including lifelong bans or police intervention. Letters flocked to his doorstep, calling him racial slurs and threatening his safety. The punch became one of the most infamous moments in NBA history, and cast a long shadow over Washington's career. Despite being an all-star before the blow, he found himself vilified, and his opportunities in the league quickly dwindled. After retiring from playing, Washington hoped to transition into coaching, but the incident haunted him, preventing him from securing a stable position despite his qualifications and experience. Off the courts, Washington faced significant personal struggles. In 2016, his name resurfaced in headlines when he was indicted on charges of embezzlement and fraud. Prosecutors accused Washington of misusing funds from Project Contact Africa, a charity that he managed that was created to provide aid to impoverished communities in Africa. Instead, Washington embezzled nearly $500,000 in donations, using the money for personal expenses including jewelry and vacations. He was arrested in LA on May 26, 2016, and the indictment, unsealed the following day, further tarnished his already controversial legacy. For many, Kermit Washington serves a cautionary tale about how a single moment can alter the trajectory of a life and career. His story is a complex mix of athletic excellence, personal challenges, and lapses in judgment that completely destroyed his life. It's a reminder that even the most talented athletes are not immune to consequences for their action. From an all-star forward to a man destroyed by his own scandal, the NBA needed to make sure something like this never happened again, and Kermit Washington was the example. Shawn Kemp's rise to fame during the 1990s is a captivating tale of raw athleticism, high-flying dunks, and massive expectations. Known as the Rain Man, Kemp was one of the most explosive and exciting players to watch during his prime. As a crucial part of one of the best teams of his era, Shawn Kemp reached some sky-high heights, but the level he reached just made his fall splat even harder at the bottom. Kemp's basketball journey began in Elkhart, Indiana, where he made a name for himself in high school, leading his team to a state championship and becoming Elkhart County's all-time leading scorer. However, Kemp's path to the NBA would not be straightforward. His college career was derailed by poor grades and legal issues, leading him to leave Kentucky and briefly play at Trinity Valley College before declaring for the 1989 NBA draft. Selected 17th overall by the Supersonics, Kemp's early years in the NBA were marked by flashes of brilliance, though he didn't immediately explode onto the scene. It wasn't until 1993 that Kemp truly made his mark, with impressive averages of 18.5 points, 10.5 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks per game from 93 to 98. His play alongside Gary Payton helped elevate the Supersonics into a championship contending team. Despite being one of the best teams in the league during the 1994 and 96 seasons, the Sonics faced disappointing playoff exits, including a historic upset by the Denver Nuggets in 1994, losing to the 8th seed, and a loss to the Chicago Bulls in the 96 finals, just inches away from touching gold. In the finals, Kemp was a standout, averaging 23 and 10, but despite his heroic efforts, the Bulls dynasty proved too much. The Sonics to this date may still be one of the best teams to not win a chip because holy hell were these guys incredible. Shawn and Gary were a duo in the purest form, as everything revolved around them. The glove could penetrate and create offense on his own, but the inward gravity of Shawn Kemp rolling to the basket created space for supporting pieces like Hershey Hawkins and Detlef Schrempf to put up stellar averages. This team clicked like very few. Kemp was reaching heights he had never seen, and it truly felt like a matter of time before Seattle was back on top. Unfortunately, the downfall of Shawn Kemp was sooner than we could have possibly imagined. By the 1996-1997 season, Kemp's off-court struggles started to overshadow his on-court success. Reports of him showing up drunk to practice and partying late into the night before games raised questions about his commitments. One infamous incident occurred the night before a February 1997 game against the Chicago Bulls, where Kemp was reportedly intoxicated and completely shit the bed that game. His diminishing interest and discipline became apparent, and in the following season, the Sonics mirrored that lack of interest, creating tension over this lowball contract offer. Shawn Kemp would forcibly take his talents to Cleveland in 1997, in a move that came with high hopes but quickly turned into just disappointments. He was out of shape entering training camp, overweight, and struggling to regain the athleticism that made him a force. His off-court issues continued, including reports of fathering multiple children with different women, and struggling with weight loss due to alcohol consumption. The 1998-1999 season was marked by lockouts and Kemp showing up massively overweight at 315 pounds, leading to further struggles on the court. His behavior became more erratic, and in 2000 he was traded to the Portland Trail Blazers. Unfortunately, his career was in a full-on free fall, and he was checked into a drug rehabilitation center during the 2001 season for cocaine abuse. Despite efforts to reclaim his former self, Kemp's career never rebounded. His final years in the NBA were uneventful on the floor and way too eventful off of it. The sight of the man who was once soaring through the sky being pitifully ineffective due to his weight dragging him down to the floor left one of the most ungraceful ends to an NBA career that the game has ever seen. Sadly, Kemp's downfall is pretty much as widely known as his run of dominance. It's hard to write the story of basketball without Kemp's name, and his role on those iconic Supersonics teams. And as we look back now, Kemp's still among some of the most entertaining and electrifying athletes to ever play the game. However, the dude who once seemed closer to Superman than to you and me went out a drug-addicted fat alcoholic, to put it bluntly. Kemp would go on to drain the vast majority of his finances after the conclusion of his career, which he earned $90 million due to his drug addiction and child support payments. Although one of the most infamous downfalls in history, at least in Kemp's case following his NBA career, he did seem to get back close to Rain Man shape while trying to make his return, though given his reputation was never given another shot. Kemp's also found some success outside of basketball in the cannabis business, and although his life ended up a bit better than others we've covered, I'm sure we all wish he could have done it without damaging his legacy in the way that he did. Kelvin Murphy's life is a mix of athletic greatness and personal turmoil. Standing at just 5'9" and weighing 165 pounds, Murphy defied expectations, becoming one of the better point guards in NBA history. Despite his small stature, he played 13 seasons for the Houston Rockets, achieving career averages of 18 points and 4 assists per game. Known for his agility, deadly jump shot, and leadership, Murphy was selected as an All-Star once and inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 1993, where he remains the shortest player ever inducted. Murphy's college career was equally impressive. At Niagara University, he once scored 68 points in a single game, a feat that earned him widespread recognition and a spot in the 1970 NBA draft, where he was selected by the Houston Rockets. Throughout his NBA career, Murphy proved that height didn't define a player's success. He was quick and explosive, using his speed to navigate around taller opponents. His best season came in 1976 when he averaged 21 points and 7 assists per game. Despite his size, he became the first player under 6 feet to score 15,000 career points, a testament to his incredible skill. Murphy was one of the most energizing players in basketball history that found success that should have not been possible. But off the court, Murphy's life was fraught with complications. He fathered 14 children with 9 different women, a fact that led to financial struggles and strained relationships with his kids. During his playing career, NBA players didn't make massive salaries like they do today, and Murphy had difficulty supporting such a large family. Many of his children lived in different parts of the country, making it difficult for him to maintain close relationships. As a result, the children from Murphy's extramarital affairs often felt neglected, leading to deep family tensions. And in 2004, Murphy found himself embroiled in a legal battle that threatened to ruin his life. He was accused of molesting 5 of his daughters, who were between the ages of 6 and 13 at the time of the alleged abuse in the 1990s. The case was sensational, and if he had been convicted, he could have faced life in prison. The prosecution claimed that Murphy had repeatedly abused his daughters in a span of several years. 4 of the daughters, now adults, testified in a court, detailing the abuse they allegedly suffered. The courtroom drama was intense, and the accusations painted a man who had exploited his own children. However, Murphy's defense team argued that the allegations were the result of long-standing resentment and jealousy. They claimed the accusations stemmed from the tension between Murphy and the children from his extramarital affairs, and that the daughters were seeking revenge for their strained relationships with him. Murphy's legal team painted him as a man who had made mistakes in his personal life, but had never committed the heinous acts that he was accused of. The trial was confusing at times, as some of Murphy's daughters defended him, including 2 from his ex-wife's marriage. At one point, the court struggled to keep track of his sprawling family, making the case even more convoluted. Despite the gravity of the accusations, the jury found Murphy not guilty. They determined that the testimony from the 5 daughters was unreliable, and that it had been influenced by resentment stemming from Murphy's treatment of them. The jury concluded that there was no credible evidence to support the charges of abuse. The defense also pointed to a conflict of interest regarding a retirement account that 3 of the 5 daughters attempted to claim 1 month before the charges were made that were redirected to Murphy after the death of their mother. After the trial, Murphy attempted to rebuild relationships with his surviving children, hoping to heal the rift that had formed over the years. The legal battle took a heavy toll on him, both emotionally and professionally, as you can expect. He lost his job as a local broadcaster for the Houston Rockets following the public scandal. However, in 2012, he was reinstated to his position, and his life seemed to take a turn for the better. Over the years, he worked on rebuilding his family relationships, and despite the chaos in his personal life, he found some measure of peace. While his basketball career is remembered for breaking barriers and his undeniable talent, Kelvin Murphy's personal life is one of the most complex and gut-wrenching no matter which way you look at it. Isaiah Rider's basketball journey is a tale of immense talent overshadowed by personal missteps and off-court struggles. Born on March 12, 1971 in Oakland, California, Ryder, often referred to by JR, rose to prominence with a unique blend of athleticism and skill that made him one of the most electrifying players of his era. Yet, his promising career, which should have been remembered for highlight reels and accolades, became a cautionary tale of wasted potential. Ryder's early years showcased his immense talent. He made a name for himself at UNLV, where his high-flying dunks and smooth scoring ability caught the attention of NBA scouts. However, his college years also hinted at troubling behavior. Ryder faced a suspension for hiring someone to complete his schoolwork, a red flag that foreshadowed future issues. Despite these setbacks, his talent was undeniable, and he entered the 1993 NBA draft with high expectations. Selected 5th overall by the Timberwolves, Ryder wasted no time making an impact. As a rookie, he averaged 16.6 points per game and quickly became a fan favorite, not only for his scoring ability, but also for his dazzling athleticism. In 1994, he cemented his place in NBA lore by winning the slam dunk contest with his iconic East Bay Funk dunk, a between-the-legs masterpiece that remains one of the most celebrated dunks in NBA history. By his second season, Ryder was averaging over 20 points per game, and fans began to see him as one of the league's next great stars. This was during a transitional period in the NBA, with Michael Jordan briefly retired and the league searching for its next dominant shooting guard. Ryder's raw talent, combined with his flair for the dramatic, seemed to position him perfectly for superstardom. However, trouble was brewing beneath the surface. Ryder's personality and attitude soon began to overshadow his on-the-court brilliance. Teammates and coaches often described him as selfish, more focused on individual achievements than team success. Despite his undeniable skill, he struggled to fit into a team structure. This sense of entitlement only grew as he felt overlooked for accolades such as all-star selections. In later interviews, Ryder expressed frustration, claiming there was a conspiracy against him and arguing that his numbers were worthy of more recognition. Off the court, Ryder's behavior quickly became increasingly problematic. He developed a reputation for clashing with authority and frequent run-ins with the law. Substance abuse became a recurring issue. In 1996, he was arrested for possession and 4 illegal cell phones, raising suspicions about illicit activities. Legal troubles and disciplinary issues began to strain his relationships with teams. After stints with the Blazers and Atlanta Hawks, Ryder's behavior became increasingly erratic. Despite leading the Hawks in scoring during the 2000 season with 19.3 points per game, he refused to attend drug counseling and frequently showed up late to practices. The Hawks eventually waived him mid-season, a rare and damning move for a team to release its leading scorer. Ryder's NBA career effectively ended in 2002, when at just 30 years old he found himself blackballed by the NBA. His immense talents had been overshadowed by years of poor decisions, clashes with teammates and coaches, and an inability to stay out of trouble. After his playing days, Ryder's life continued to spiral downward. He was arrested multiple times for incidents ranging from domestic violence to cocaine possession. In one particularly alarming case, he was accused of kidnapping his own son, further tarnishing his reputation. These legal troubles painted a grim picture of a man who was unable to escape from his own demons. In recent years, Ryder has made an effort to turn around his life, founded a charity aimed at helping underprivileged kids, offering them the support and resources that he lacked growing up. Through speaking engagements and mentorship programs, Ryder has sought to use his story as a warning to others, highlighting the importance of discipline and wise decision-making. Isaiah Ryder's story is a complex mess of brilliance and tragedy. On the court, he was a once-in-a-generation talent whose highlight reel plays captured the imagination of fans. Off the court, his struggles with substance abuse, legal issues, and difficult personality turned what should have been a Hall of Fame career into an absolute nightmare. Now, make sure you check out this other video I made here on NBA players who blackballed themselves, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.